pull in this one. And this will be a brand new intro that has never been heard before.
Okay, cool. Am I supposed to just sit quietly?
Yeah, it'll be fine.
Okay, good.
Here we go.
Welcome to Wise and Nerdy, where fatherhood meets fandom. Tonight, Joe, like a single father, has to carry the show all by himself. Don't worry, Joe has lined up some great guests, because he's just that good.
So
where's that music from? That's really good music. I'm already wrecking your show.
I'm not sure, to be honest. So yeah, for some backstory on this, for the longest time, the only intro I've had was the one with Charles doing the voiceover, even though Charles himself has like 6 or 7 different ones that he could use. And so the conspiracy theory that was eventually confirmed by Charles himself was he did that so that his voice was always on the show.
That's cool.
So
I like that.
One of our patrons reached out and said, "Hey Joe, here's some alternate ones for you that don't involve Charles." And so the one that I just played for the first time ever came to us from Devo's site, one of our longtime listeners.
Very cool.
But as everyone can tell, Charles is not here, but with me is the fabulous Clint Hall. Clint, if you would like to introduce yourself and tell people a little bit about yourself.
Oh man. Okay. So the first thing that you should know about me is that I love being the center of attention, but I hate talking about myself. So when you're like, introduce yourself, I'm like, people don't want to know. We just get on with the show. No, I'm Clint Hall. Thanks for having me, by the way. I'm excited to be here. I am a sci-fi fantasy author. I've put out 2 books. One is called Steal Fire from the Gods. It is basically about AI discovering the powers of elemental magic and using that power to overthrow humanity. And then my newest book came out in January of 2025. It's called Echo Nova. It is about a high school dropout who becomes the star of a reality series that sends him on adventures through time. In addition to all that, I'm a marketing copywriter by day and sometimes a musician. And I'm also married and have kids. And I live in Atlanta. And I have a deep, undying love for the Atlanta Hawks. So that's pretty much everything you need to know about me.
There you go. Yeah, I'm gonna have some questions for you later about your journey as an author.
Sure.
I've got lots of notes of stories I would like to write. But yeah, so we'll get there. We will get there. But before we do that, let's go ahead and start with
it's the question of the week.
And the question of the week for this week is, what is your favorite movie quote? And you asked specifically if you could do your favorite movie scene.
Yeah. Okay. This is why, for everyone listening, watching, whatever, this is why I'm never going to get invited back again, because like a very simple thing, it is probably supposed to be like a 30-second bit. And he's like, just tell me a movie quote. And I'm like, hey man, can I do a scene instead? Because to pull back the curtain, right? Because we're going to talk about storytelling a little bit, I think. Mm-hmm. And this is just a scene I think about all the time. Do you love Predator? I love Predator. Do you love it?
I don't know if I love it, but I like it a lot.
I love Predator.
Might be a little too strong for me.
Depending on the day that you ask me, Predator is my favorite movie. It's either Predator or Terminator 2. But okay, so there's a scene in Predator. It's like at the very, very beginning. And I just think it's a brilliant scene, especially since we're going to talk about storytelling. So Arnold Schwarzenegger's character, Dutch, kind of comes in and they're like, oh, we got this mission, blah, blah, blah. And Carl Weathers' character is kind of like hiding in the background. He's like, hey, well, some fool said that you're the best, and that's why we chose you. And they walk toward. He goes, Dylan, and there's a lot that you're learning there already. That there's recognition. They walk toward each other and they do the thing where they grab and they're kind of arm wrestling. So you know that they're friends. But then there's also a competition between. There's tension already, right? There's competition between the two of them because they're arm wrestling. They're kind of doing the thing. And Arnold says, what's the matter? Does the CIA have you pushing too many pencils, right? So that's your first clue that something is different. But then and this is kind of the quote. Um, but it really sets the scene. They kind of like stop arm wrestling, and then they're kind of laughing or whatever. And Arnold kind of reaches over and he says, "What's with this what's with this tie business?" And that's your first clue that something has. That wasn't your first clue, but that is your big clue that something has actually changed about Dylan. He obviously didn't used to wear a tie, because here Dutch is calling it out.
Yeah.
So there's this archetype in mythological storytelling, is the skin changer, and that when someone changes their appearance, when they change their skin, that represents that there's been a change somehow in their character, and that's what they're telling you about Dylan here, that he's a skin changer. And it is often, but not always, associated with a character who's being deceptive. And that's what Dylan is doing. And you find this out later. You find out later that, that they're lying to Dutch. This whole mission is kind of is a fraud, and they're actually tricking him into doing something else that he wouldn't do if he knew that they were sending him to do this. But so he says, "What's with this tie business?" And then Dylan immediately deflects. He goes, "Don't worry about the tie." And then he throws his arm around Dutch. He's like, "I heard about that thing you pulled in Berlin. That was really impressive." And he starts immediately kind of just trying to coax him. In a movie like Predator, I don't feel like people would expect to have that high of level of sort of characterization and storytelling, but it's there. You would think that that's the movie where there's a space monster and Jesse the Body Ventura is firing a big gun, and Shane Black, of all people, is in there telling dirty jokes, and that is basically what Predator is. But there was also I always appreciated that there's that level of care in the storytelling. I think about that scene all the time, because it is such a brilliant bit of storytelling in such a very, very small, it's the whole thing that I just described. It's like 30 seconds, So anyways, probably my favorite scene in any movie ever.
Okay. Yeah. There's a lot of good segments in Predator, just in general. But yeah,
it's fantastic. It was brilliant that they gave the Predator a code. Somebody really thought about that movie. It wasn't just because that very could have easily just been another action movie, but it wasn't. They went the extra mile of he doesn't attack someone who's unarmed. That this is about a warrior thing. This is about proving itself. And so I've always really appreciated that franchise. And even sometimes the movies that were weaker, there was still interesting mythology there. And if a story has interesting mythology, even if the movie itself isn't that great, you've still pretty much got me hooked. This is my thing on Transformers, by the way. Transformers, I think, is brilliant in that, is it Mattel? I think it's Mattel. They just hired Marvel. They hired some Marvel writers to be like, "Hey, can you just write a backstory for these toys? Just whatever. We just want to sell the toys and we need a backstory." And they turned out this brilliant and deep mythology that goes that's super just super legendary and interesting and all this stuff that should have just been some guys cranking something out for the toy line, but they actually cared more about it than that. And that stuff really resonates with me when I come across things like that.
Yeah. Well, characters that live by their own code in general really resonate with me. And seeing that applied to a villain is, I find that super interesting, because they're limiting themselves, whereas so many other villains are just it doesn't matter what I do as long as I reach my goals. Whereas the villains who live by their own code, as warped as it may be, it adds that much more depth to their character, even if it's a basic code or simple code, like the Predator. His is relatively basic, but it's there.
It is an interesting thing about human psychology that we will respect a character with a code, even if we don't agree with their code. The fact that they have a code and that they are willing to perhaps sacrifice even sacrifice their end goal because they are so committed to that code. There's something about us that really just is drawn to that. Again, even if it's a code that we don't agree with, I think that's really interesting.
Yeah, it is.
By the way, excuse my tea. I am fighting off. I'm almost done with my annual summer cold that I get every year, no matter what I do. And you can appreciate that this being a dad podcast. I mean,
the man flu. You're braving through the whole thing. It's amazing you're here.
Oh no, gosh, yeah. Well, you know how it is too. And my kids aren't so young anymore, but you know how it is, especially when they're super young. Someone in the house is always sick. Always. And we're finally about out of that now, but there's still a little bit of it here and there. So
Yeah,
but we're
just wait till
okay.
school starts back up. Everyone will be sick again.
I know, man. No kidding. No kidding. Yeah, so.
Before I go on to list my movie quotes, my wife tonight, she knew this would be the question of the week. So she went around the table at dinner tonight asking my kids what their favorite movie quotes were.
I
And
love this so much.
Called it in as a speak pipe. So let's go ahead and see what they had to say.
Hello from the _ard family. This is Mrs. _ herself. I have movie quotes from our family. We'll start youngest to oldest here. Little Jebediah says his favorite quote is, "What a tall bag," from the Minecraft movie. Translation, what a tool bag. Bob says his favorite quote is, "I'll squish your head like a walnut between my butt cheeks." Again, from the Minecraft movie. There's a theme here. Let's see. Malachi says his favorite quote is "Chicken Jockey" from the Minecraft movie.
It had to be said.
One comes from The Count of Monte Cristo with Jim Caviezel. Joe and I have been talking a lot about this movie recently because it's on our favorites list and we want to watch it again.
It's a good one.
But one of my favorite characters in the movie is the priest when the Count is in jail, and they form this wonderful friendship. And one of his dying lines is, "I'm a priest, not a saint." And that is one of my favorites.
That's so good.
I just love the movie, and it's great. And it has a lot of wonderful quotes, so it was hard to pick just one. Hope you guys have a fun recording. Bye.
Mrs. _ by the way, that is brilliant. Huh.
Yeah. It comes from years and years ago when we were doing the Pokemon Go podcast. I said embrace the _, and that became my thing. So.
Well, I'll tell you, Minecraft is huge in our house right now too. And I think if I would have asked my sons the same question, I would have gotten la 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 lava chicken, because that is all the time. Both of them the time are walking around the house singing that. And great movie though. We actually had a lot of fun with that movie. I was really surprised. I thought it was. I mean, I guess I should have known that it would be good, but it was honestly better even than I expected. It kind of had
going into it though, just looking at it, I was like, no, this shouldn't work. Thinking about it beforehand, but it did. It really did. It worked.
When it had kind of an 80s vibe a little bit. Yeah, I kind of felt like, it had like kind of a throwback, and I'm assuming you and I are probably roughly the same age. It kind of felt, like a lot of the movies that we sort of grew up with, and especially even, this is a weird thing for me to have liked about the movie. My 4-year-old might have been he's almost 5. He might have been a little too young to see it, and there were a couple things in there that scared him, but they didn't scare him so much that he didn't want to watch the movie. This is kind of a thing that I talk to other dads about sometimes. Is like, is it good for movies to scare kids a little bit? You know what I mean? Is it good for them to have a little bit of an emotional reaction like that? Because I feel like I'm probably guilty of trying to shield them a little too much. But I'm like, maybe it's good for them to have some of the, because I don't know, I kind of think back fondly on some of the movies that freaked me out a little bit when I was a kid. You know, I think that's a maybe kind of a rite of passage for a kid. I don't know.
Yeah. I 100% agree. So growing up, my dad was huge on horror films.
Okay.
And I saw stuff that really I should not have, but I got desensitized pretty dang quick.
Yeah.
To most horror films. There were a couple that stuck with me and haunted me, but for the most part, I got desensitized pretty quick. And I think kids can handle a lot more than you expect them to, as long as you're willing, at least probably for a few nights, to possibly wake up with them having nightmares. But but like you said, you didn't say, flat out scare them. Is it a good thing for them to be scared a little bit? And I think that is a great way to do it, to ease them into some of these more, and not even just scared, but even just any topic, more mature topics, ease them into them as they're growing up. But
what horror movies, by the way? I got to know what horror movies y'all were watching.
So the one that freaked me out the most as a kid was the leprechaun.
Oh, I never saw that,
So,
but I remember what it looked like. That was a terrifying look. I wouldn't watch that
yeah.
now.
No, yeah. And the first one took itself seriously as a horror film.
Okay.
The rest of them
Yeah.
got super campy and
Sure.
and cheesy. Like the second one was like Leprechaun in the Hood, and there was like Leprechaun in Vegas and
remember
Leprechaun in space. Like they get super out there. But the first one took itself seriously as a
Yeah.
horror film. And there were some moments that there's one in particular which, let's just say, it involves a pogo stick, and those that know, those that don't go
probably don't need to ask.
But that
do not Google it.
specific scene really messed with me as a kid. But yeah, no, my dad, his quality time was almost always through movies. And
Mine
so
too.
growing up, we watched movies all the time. It was almost nightly we would watch a movie. And so we were
Something.
constantly going to Hollywood Video or Blockbuster or whatever to rent a movie and bring it home. And so you go through all the A stuff real quick. So we watched all kinds of super cheesy, campy stuff. But some of those ended up being as cheesy as they were. I liked them a lot.
Sure.
One that was cheesy, Universal Soldier. I don't know if you ever.
Oh man, are you kidding? Have I heard of Universal Soldier? Dude, we watched every Van Damme movie, and then was Lundgren the bad guy in that one? The Universal Soldier. I can't remember who the. I don't remember. I know it was a Van Damme movie though. Yeah.
But yeah, no, but
yeah, man.
In general,
You name any Van Damme movie, and I saw it. Yeah.
Oh, Double Team with Rodman.
Double Team. Oh, dude. Man. Yeah, it was Dolph Lundgren. Dolph Lundgren was the bad guy in Universal Soldier. And I think Goldberg was in one of the sequels too. I think there was a handful of Universal Soldiers.
Yeah. Well, and it still happens today, but back then they would make sequels off of everything, and they just got increasingly more campy because they also usually went straight to TV instead of to theaters and everything.
Yeah.
But okay, so for my movie, so first I'm gonna do a TV quote. I'm gonna cheat.
Cool. Okay.
Have you ever watched MasterChef?
No, I haven't watched MasterChef.
Okay, so MasterChef is it's a bunch of top tier chefs. Like Gordon Ramsay is one of the judges that are judges, and then they've got these home chefs that come in and compete in this cooking competition, and they learn along the way. Like the top tier chefs teach them in between episodes and critique them and things like that. And so in season 4, there was this contestant named Luca, just generally a great guy. Like, so this is a competition, and there were multiple times during the season where they were doing part of the competition where you have to go get all of your ingredients at the beginning and then go back to your station and cook it, and you're not allowed to go get any more ingredients. Well, there were multiple times where people forgot ingredients and were asking the other contestants if they could borrow some, and he gave them that he gave it on multiple different occasions. Sure. And so he was just in general a good guy. And he did, spoiler alert for something that came out 12 years ago, he does end up winning that season. But there was a section where he was trying a dessert that someone else had made, and because I can't remember if he was in disbelief that he lost or something like that, like that specific round. But they let him try it. And he holds it up and he's like, "Can I keep it?" And that one little thing, it was just so cute and innocent. I was like, okay, that's pretty adorable. I think it was a cupcake or something or a muffin, but it just, "Can I keep it?"
That's great.
Yeah. But yeah, but if I'm not cheating, there's so many good quotes from Dumbledore in the Harry Potter movies.
Come on. Of course.
But one of the ones that I like is, it is not our abilities that show what we truly are. It is
Sure.
our choices.
Yeah.
And
That's
so,
good.
yeah. And it speaks to the character of a person is not restrained by your capabilities. Your character is completely independent of that, and it's solely based on the choices that you make. The often difficult choices that you make is who you really are. And I like that.
And
I like it a lot.
I would even say too, I completely agree. And the other thing that I would almost kind of add to that too is just where you're going in life is also, what I have learned as I have gotten older, is so much more about the choices you make versus your capabilities. So many people that I have come across that are, and the term successful can be fraught, of course, but let's just say like what people would generally consider successful. So many people that are very successful have no idea what they're doing. Not really. Or at least they didn't when they started. And what they did is they just kind of made a choice to go for it anyway. And they just kind of trusted themselves to be able to figure it out as they went along. And they do, and there's just so many, because I feel like we are so often tempted to like sort of look at people who have achieved great things and think that there's some kind of difference between us and them. And then like, as you dig deeper and you learn more, you kind of find out that there's actually kind of not. I heard BJ Novak one time was on a podcast, and he was talking about going to Harvard, and he was part of like the Harvard Lampoon and all that. And he said, because I got to tell you though, he's like, obviously I learned a lot and everything. He said, but I think that honestly, just the single greatest thing that I took away from that experience was just this knowledge that other people who had been where I was then accomplished the things that I wanted to accomplish. He said, it basically just made me believe I could do it. The simple fact that I was there, but it wasn't anything that he learned. He didn't get like some like magic spell book for being a comedy writer. It was just simply that it just kind of gave him some confidence. And the point that he was making is, he's like, really, anybody can do this. You kind of just have to work. You have to work really hard.
Yeah.
But it's not like, these people that we often think like they know something I don't. Maybe they don't. You know what I mean? Or they're a lot smarter than I am. I don't know. Maybe not. They maybe just were bold enough to, or made a lot of choices that set them up to then achieve whatever was it they were trying to achieve. So
yeah. Well, I think a lot of success, it depends on what field you're in, but there's a lot of times a dash of luck to it. There's a dash of circumstance, but
yes,
the largest parts are effort and being willing to adapt.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. Grit.
Those are the two
grit
biggest
and
things.
Yeah, totally.
So,
do you think about how am I going to put that into my kids? Because I think about that a lot.
Yes, yeah. I do. And that's something you can only teach to a certain degree.
I agree.
And I think a lot of that teaching is through example.
Yeah.
Rather than anything else, because probably 90% of what you teach your kids is through example and not what you're actually saying.
Which is hard too, though, because I don't know, your kids are getting a little bit older now. So much of my time with my kids is spent like sort of directly interacting with them and kind of taking with them. And they're finally now getting old enough that they don't. Here's the thing. So like, they don't see me working really hard on my books because I do it like sometimes maybe in the morning before they wake up or after they go to bed. But it does occur to me, for example, okay, they don't see me working really hard on. It's extremely hard to write a book, but they don't see that.
Yeah.
How do I let them see that? Or even dumb things like, so I kind of prefer e-readers for convenience sake, again, because I'm a dad. But it's also occurred to me that, okay, but I don't want my kids to look at me holding an iPad. I want them to see me reading a book. So I'm going to now start buying more physical books simply because I want them to see me reading books. I don't know. I've thought a lot about exactly what you're saying is, how am I setting an example? And the other thing that I do a lot too is I do kind of believe that, especially when they're younger, you can sort of speak things into being true in them because they just absorb things. And so all the time, We do hard things. We do hard things. And even if it's a game they're playing and they're like, this is hard. I was like, yeah, you're right. It is hard. But if you keep practicing, you'll get better. And it's good to do hard things. We do hard things. And I say that over and over and over again. And I don't know, man. I hope it's taking root. But the truth is, I can't pretend like I got answers. But this is a topic I think about all the time.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah. Yeah. It is a great topic, to be completely honest.
It is, though. Yeah.
But yeah. Boy. All right. Well, let's go ahead and see what we're going to talk about next.
Roll the dice of destiny.
All right. That's unanimous there.
Personal story time.
So, for personal story time, Daddy, tell me a story about why nerdy dads are secretly the best kinds of heroes. This kind of goes along with what you were just talking about, actually.
It does. Although, and again, pulling back the curtain, I knew that this was possibly, sort of one of the things and that we'd be talking about. And I really do think that it's because nerdy dads are probably, and I don't mean to pigeonhole that. I don't imagine there's a lot of non-nerdy dads that are going to be watching or listening to this, but hey, if you're there, maybe you're good at this too, but nerdy dads are good at wonder, I think, and really understand the value of wonder. And I think that way too many of us, as we age, because of the things that happen, lose that sense of wonder. And that is a shame. That is a shame, because it not only just impacts your happiness, it's going to impact your creativity, it's going to impact your sense of what's possible. It's the dreamers that create these things that 10 years ago we would have thought were magic, but to the dreamers, they're the ones who can make these sort of things a reality. And so, for me, I don't know if I even have one single remarkable story, but I hope that it's a lot of stories about my son telling me that he's the Dragon King. Like he did the other day, like kind of out of nowhere. He's like, I'm the Dragon King. I'm like, okay, great. And we rolled with it. I've heard people compare being a parent to like being an improv comic, that you always have to yes and pretty much whatever your kids throw at you. And I do think that nerdy dads are particularly equipped to do that with a child's imagination, just that because I think that one of the things that often makes us nerdy is that we have held on to that sense of wonder. And I'm pigeonholing a little bit. You can be a nerd and not into sci-fi and not into fantasy and that sort of thing, certainly.
Yeah.
But I do believe a lot of us are. And I think that it's because a lot of us want to believe that there's still some of that magic left in the world, like children believe, And so I don't know, that may not be the kind of answer that you were going for. You might, well, Joseph, let me tell you about a time that my kid did a thing and then I did a thing. And wasn't that hilarious? I don't have a great one for that, but I do think that that's my answer to the question is why I think that nerdy dads can be heroes is because, I think that we can fan those flames of helping them believe that like anything is possible,
Yep.
So yeah, that's my answer there.
I like it. Yeah. Fan that imagination, fan the pride in themselves, the confidence to
Absolutely
take on the world. Yeah. When I think about my kids, one of the things, and some may say this turns me into a villain rather than a hero, but one of the things that we talked about, Charles and I talked about last week, is when you're playing video games with your kids, not letting them win, making them earn that win, because there is that level of growth that comes from making them earn it, from making them grow and strive to improve, and instilling that desire to get better will help. I mean, it'll help in the video game, but it'll help in their life in general. That desire to not just live in the status quo, to succeed and excel. And so while at times my kids may see me as the villain, especially if I'm trash talking them as I'm beating them, but that when they get older, I hope that perception will change and they will appreciate that I never went easy on them.
Yeah.
But at the same time, when the trash talking is over and whatnot, I can talk to them about, hey, you did really good at this part,
Right.
or this is what
Right.
you can improve on,
Yeah.
and helping them to learn and grow is all part of living life. And so in that respect, I think nerdy dads excel at being superheroes in their kids' lives.
What game do y'all play? Or
Uh,
games, I should say.
so last week I played Smash Brothers a fair bit with them, and
Yeah.
Mario Kart with them.
Yep. Yep.
Got to hit him with that shell right before they hit cross finish line.
Yes. Those are both popular titles in our house too. Yeah, a lot of Mario Kart, a lot of Smash Brothers.
So, but then there's always the games that we play collaboratively as well. We were talking about the Minecraft movie earlier. My kids love Minecraft, and they love showing off the different things that they've built and explaining the story behind why they built it and everything. And so fostering that sense of joy and wonderment
Yes.
on what they have created, it goes a long way towards boosting up a kid's self-esteem.
There's so much.
Even if you don't exactly see what they're trying to build, you just listen to how they describe it and go from there.
There is so much that kids can learn from gaming. I mean, there really is, and there's so many different options. That another one, and I would agree with everything that you pointed out. And another one is, so we play. The three of us play. It's like Mario Strikers Battle League or something like that. It's basically it's kind of like it's like a soccer game, but it's like you throw shells at each other and you like crash into each other. It's but it's a lot of teamwork in that game, and it's a lot of, especially for the older one, me telling him, look, buddy, we're a team, and if you want us to win, you're going to have to lift your brother up, and that is actually super important for me. I can't think of a better gift that I could give my two sons than for them to be best friends growing up. Because I think about, especially the two of them, they're so different, but they have very complementary strengths. To have a brother that is your best friend and that you can trust. And so for one thing, you're always going to have your best friend around. But then also, your whole life, you will have someone that you could completely and wholly trust with absolutely everything, and I even think about, like, when they're a teenager, right? When they're teenagers, and if one of them gets into some kind of trouble where they don't want to call dad, maybe they'll at least call their brother, right? That's a win. And then even but as they get older, though, I don't know. But I'm trying so hard to forge that connection now of, you guys are a team, build each other up, and games can be such a great way to sort of practice that. So I love all the things that you're sharing. And I think that games can be such a great way to practice those life skills.
Yep. You talked about kids being best friends. Random kid put in the chat, kids fluctuate
that's
between
so
best
good.
friends and arch
So
enemies.
So good. Yeah. But isn't that like most best friends also, though, like often, I mean, a lot of my best friends, we also fluctuated between being best friends and arch enemies, but yeah.
Or
that
at
is
least rivals.
Totally. That is an astute observation for sure. Yeah.
Oh yeah. All right. Well, let's go ahead and see what we're going to talk about next.
Roll that dice.
All right.
Council of Dads.
Or as we renamed it after recording everything, the Parliament of Papas. And this one, I would love to hear some hot takes from you. Should AI be used in the creative process? We have Tyra in the chat here. She's got some very strong opinions.
Tyra's, I know Tyra. By the way, hello, Tyra. By the way, Tyra is the only person other than myself that has hosted my podcast. She was kind enough to be the host when my book came out. And so I was the guest and she was the host. And so hello, Tyra. She's one of the best. No, okay. Boy, I can get a lot of trouble because creatives it's super hot. This is one of those topics where, like, I kind of feel like if I shared my perspective long enough, at the end of it, everybody's mad at me, sort of on all sides. Short answer is no.
Okay.
Longer answer is I'm not trying to tell anybody their business. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I am very much of that mindset of like, look, I'm not trying to tell anybody their business. I'm just kind of worried about me. I do not want to have it be and I will not allow AI to be part of my creative process. Now, here's the thing too. We have to be careful here because AI is in literally every. Well, for one thing, AI is not AI. What we call AI is not AI. It's not sentient. It's not self-aware. It's not any of those things. AI is honestly, it is super impressive. It is a very powerful tool, but it is also marketing spin to call it AI. It's actually not really AI. Okay, we'll just set that aside.
AI these days, right?
Exactly, right. But see, that's kind of the thing,
They
though.
were smart devices, now they're AI devices, and they're basically the same thing.
But you're exactly right, though. But to say I won't use AI. If you go on Facebook and you say I will not use AI, I'm like, I'm sorry, but the ship has already kind of sailed. If you're even if you turn off the AI features on Facebook, I'm sorry, you're still using AI. If you're using Microsoft, you're using AI. It is inseparable from technology at this point. And y'all, I write about this stuff for a living, and I can tell you that the powers that be, that they have made up their minds that this is the way that it's going to be. Like, you cannot put this toothpaste back in the tube. All that, we're going to push all that aside for a second. Okay. But that is part of where, when I do say that I'm not trying to tell anybody their business too, is it is also pretty much inseparable from the creative process in some regard. If you are using technology in any way, unless you are handwriting your book, but even then, it's eventually going to be put into a word processor that's going to have AI, and it's going to be edited probably with some type of AI tools. All that said, I think it's a bummer. I think you are cheating yourself. So much of what I see, the conversation around AI tends to be about the eventual goal seems to be kind of commercially competitive, that artists that use AI are going to essentially sell more of whatever it is that they're making and eventually make more money because of volume, I suppose, and ease.
Yeah, because they can make it faster.
And you know what? Maybe that's true. And the truth is, I actually don't think it is. And this is difficult for me to talk about without really getting really deep into kind of what I believe. But I kind of just believe that there are things intrinsically between humans that we can't fully explain, that AI will not be able to replicate. But also, I think it's just a bummer if you do that to yourself, because there is nothing like the creative process. There is nothing like that magic of banging your head against a thing. And I've done this with music. I've done this with books. I've done this with a lot of things. But then you get up and you walk away, and then all of a sudden it hits you out of nowhere. You're like, that's the answer. That's the thing. Or, for me, I'm a Christian author. Like, I'll be in church or something, and I'll hear a thing, and I was like, that fits perfectly into my book. And it's this wonderful eureka moment, right? And of course, you don't have to believe in God to know what I'm talking about. You could call it could just be simply a subconscious thing when your mind keeps working. But those magical moments of the creative process, if you are robbing yourself of those, what is the point? If what you're worried about is just trying to make money, there's better ways to make money, especially using AI, than the creative process. So do I think that it should be part of the creative process? Again, short answer, no. Long answer is there's a super gray area, because all the tools that we're all going to be using are going to have AI in them in some way or another. And it is super nuanced. And the truth is it's kind of not my place to judge somebody else. It's not. Now we can start talking about the legality of these tools and what constitutes fair use. That is a whole other podcast, and one that I am frankly not qualified to talk about. But
most of the people that are doing AI are not qualified.
They're not.
Simply because
they're not. Well,
they're violating so many copyrights.
Well, but the thing is though is and so but they're coming out and they're saying things like, well, all this stuff was yeah, it's copyrighted, but it was publicly available. And so what does that count as fair use or not? And it kind of looks like everybody was sort of like looking around and be like, I don't know. We've never had to answer this question before. And so, but anyways, that's a whole other.
Yeah,
other
but then
thing.
there's like Meta feeding in books and books and books and books. Those aren't publicly available unless you're going to pirated.
That's a different thing. That's a different thing. So but again, I won't go into it. And by the way, y'all, I'm not here trying to try to defend the altruism of large corporations. I promise you. I promise you. That is not my position. Right. So yeah.
For people who have been listening to our podcast for a long time, they know Charles loves AI. He absolutely loves it. And to be completely blunt, we've been for a long time working on a rebrand of our artwork for our show. Mm-hmm. And we're getting to the final stages of it, which means it'll probably be, sometime next unveil it. But what we did though, throughout that process, while we were trying to just figure out what we wanted, we used AI to generate a bunch of images. Sure. And just during the brainstorming process, but then we went and we hired an actual artist to bring all of the different ideas to life. Tyra put in the chat. Charles would date AI. I would not be surprised.
He's not here to defend himself.
He's not here to defend himself. But even and I've said that the AI can be a powerful tool for brainstorming purposes in the creative process. But even then, you've got to be very, very, very careful. I personally have consumed way more than I ought to have of AI stories that are on Facebook.
Okay.
And I can always tell when it's AI, especially if there's little things that you're like, oh, that's exactly the same. And they get very formulaic, they get very predictable. And like one thing that gets to me every single time, someone's having a phone conversation and the AI story will be like, and I nodded even though they couldn't see me. Something to that and I'm like, every time. And the amount of times that it repeats the same thing but slightly different in these AI stories, you're like, oh, well, you just changed the story a little bit with your retelling because the AI starts to hallucinate a little bit. But you can also use it to do mundane tasks. Like I often use AI, and how much creativity goes into show notes is debatable, but I often use AI to help write the show notes for the podcast, and I'll proofread it and change it up a bit based on what it spit out. But large parts of our show notes is done by AI, and so having it fulfill some of these mundane tasks that most people aren't going to read the show notes anyway. You just need buzzwords in there, and I tell it to do some SEO stuff, and it's about SEO. It makes it better than I would have made it as far as SEO goes. Sure. And but when you are going through a true creative process like writing a book, if you include AI at all, it should be, in my opinion, less than 0.1% of the overall effort. So that's my opinion.
And again, I agree with that. And I'm always like, look, I'm not here to judge anybody else, but it just, I feel like, so I have 2 books now that have been published and they are on my shelf. And I feel like if I looked at those, it felt like I had used like AI to actually write some of it. I don't know, like I would be less proud of it, it would feel less me.
Yeah. See, Tyra is also an author, and she had, this is a great use in my opinion. She says, I had ChatGPT come up with a list of questions for me to dive further into one of my characters because I needed to start a conversation, but I didn't answer them in AI.
Well, so but see, in what she's
to generate questions for herself to dive deeper into her
You
character.
see, and that's the thing, though, right? Because really, what she's talking about, though, is really just using it like a search engine. That's no different, really, than. But then where do you draw the line? Of course, but to me, I'm like, well, no, that's just like Googling it 10 years ago, and you would have found a blog where somebody had a character sheet, right? Which I use character sheets all the time.
Oh yeah.
And that's essentially the same thing, you know.
Well, yeah,
It is what she's
using
talking
it for
about
mundane facts, I don't think it counts as part of the creative process, in my opinion. Like it is
I
technically,
agree.
but it's part of the process, but it's not part of the creative aspect of
Right.
it.
Right.
Like if I was going to write something, I'm like, okay, I want some rare mineral to be part of this book. Okay,
Mhm.
Chat GPT, give me a list of rare earth minerals and how rare they are, you know, something like that, and it would just spit out
Right.
what are presumably facts.
Whatever. Right. Presumably, yeah. Well, right, exactly. That's the other thing too, is you do have to check your sources. But that was always true. I mean, that was also true before AI. Like, who knows, right? If any of this stuff was actually true, and just because, you know, there was a time when everybody thought that it's in a book, it has to be true, and they wouldn't put it in a book if it wasn't true. So. Yeah.
Oh
yeah,
man.
so, yeah.
But yeah, yes. So I think we're pretty much in agreement that if you include it, it shouldn't be part of the creative process. But it can be part of the process. At least if you're a true creative. And I'm gonna go. That might be a hot take, but I'm gonna go there.
Yeah, I think, it's just, y'all, it's not worth it. Don't rob yourself of that. You know, you just don't rob yourself of the beauty of the creative process. Because it's also never going to have the, did you ever watch the show, The Americans, by the way? Not a lot of people watched that show.
Americans.
It was a Matthew Rhys show with, Carrie Russell, I think, and they were Russian spies living in America. The show actually doesn't matter. I was listening to a podcast with the showrunner, and he said this thing that I think about all the time, which he said, every real pitch starts off as a joke pitch, and it's a bunch of writers in the writer's room, and one of them will make a joke about something, and purely meaning it to be a joke, but then like, well, wait a second, what if we actually did do that like thing that seemed crazy 10 seconds ago when you made a joke about it? And then these things that will start off just as a silly, weird, off the wall idea will then often can turn into the best stories. AI is never going to do that. Or, okay, so I have I don't think this is sharing too much. I have a trilogy coming up. We have not announced the title yet, but when the publisher called me and we were like, hey, we're going to put out this trilogy, and we're kind of talking about it, and we were going through the names of the 3 books. This is breaking news, but I'm not going to say it. The name of the 3rd book, he said by accident. He was like, oh, wait, I didn't actually mean to say that. And I was like, wait, that's perfect. What is that? AI is never going to do that. You know, it's not going to have those human things, those like perfectly imperfect moments, you know, that then turn into these like sort of beautiful things. You know, AI is never going to do that. So, which is honestly why, like, I often also just kind of want to tell people, like, y'all, let's just calm down just a little bit. We're going to be all right.
Well, and I don't know if you've heard this story before, but an author took, and maybe you'll be able to figure this out. I'll explain it afterwards, or say what it is. But an author said ideas are cheap, and he believed it to such an extent that he challenged someone to give him a bad idea that he would write about. And
was this Sanderson?
No, but Sanderson.
I've heard Sanderson. I've heard Sanderson say this too. Yeah. Okay. Yeah.
So, and the idea was Pokemon crossed with the Roman Legion. Okay.
Cool idea.
And so the the author that wrote this, the book that was written is the Codex of Alera. I don't know if you're familiar with that at all.
I haven't heard of this. I don't know this.
Jim Butcher.
Oh, okay. Then I should have pretended like I knew it then because he's a big deal. She a Codex of Alara. Yeah. Oh, Alara. I always think of it as Alara. That's why. That's
it's
I'm just kidding.
ALERA. But
Okay.
yeah, and so it turned out to be a very good book series because ideas are cheap, and you can get ideas through ChatGPT. But true creative skill is not cheap, and is not something that ChatGPT can actually replicate.
This is a little bit of a tangent. So next week, I'm going to a writers conference in Grand Rapids, and there's always a ton of new writers there who are pitching to agents and editors and stuff. And as a published author now, and they'll come and they'll like, and I'll say, well, tell me what your idea is, and they'll be like, okay, but you have to promise me you're not going to steal it. And there is nothing that flags you more as like a new author than like being afraid that somebody's going to steal your idea, because and I get it. I was there too. You think that you've got this brilliant 1 in a million, 1 in a billion idea. And by the way, maybe you do. Everybody else here also thinks that they have a 1 in a million or 1 in a billion idea. But even if someone did steal your idea, anything that they did with it is going to be completely different than whatever you're doing with it, because it's about your voice as a writer. It's about your ability to craft a compelling plot. It's about all of these other things. And I agree. And the way I heard Sanderson say it was like, he's like, yeah, cool ideas are a dime a dozen. They're important. Cool ideas are you got to have a cool idea, but they're also a dime a dozen.
Oh yeah. Yeah. So good. All right. Let's see what we're going to talk about next.
This is cool, by the way. I love this. I love the dice thing.
Yeah. All right.
Time for a commercial break.
All right. Let me get some music going, and then I would like you to let everyone know where they can find you. And so you've got 2 main books along with some anthologies. Which of those books would you recommend if someone is going to be jumping into your work?
Oh man. Oh boy. So we're talking about AI. I'll talk about I'm assuming that the audience I can't do this with this music. No, keep it going. I'm kidding. No, keep it rolling. That's great. Okay. No, check it. Hey everybody, this is Clint Hall. Check out my debut novel, Steal Fire from the Gods. I'm waiting for the bass drop. So my debut novel, which came out about 1.5 years ago, is about a world in which AI discovers the secrets of elemental magic and uses that power to overthrow humanity. If that sounds wildly unfair, it's because it is. We get decimated like immediately. But don't worry, there is a deeper life-based magic that is discovered by a few survivors that they use to fight back. It is a fantasy book disguised as a sci-fi book. It has magic robots and an animal companion. And honestly, I think maybe the best ending to a book I've ever read. I was kind of cracked the whole time that this was going on. So anyways, that's my debut novel. You can find it anywhere. And if you want to buy something for your kids, I do have a young adult book called Echo Nova. That is just a young adult, super fun, super fast-paced book about a dropout who becomes the star of a reality series that sends him on adventures through time. Everything is on Amazon. You can also find it through my publisher has a web store that's enclavepublishing.com. You can go there, but you can also order it anywhere that you would order books online. And of course, you can find me at clinthall.com.
Very nice.
I got to practice this more because the music. It's really cool.
Got to work on that elevator pitch.
I got to work on. Yeah, I tell you, and I can do the thing. I actually love walking into a pitch appointment with an editor or an agent. I have a lot of fun with it. But again, when I go on, when I get on the podcast and these things, I'm like, talk about your book. I'm like, you don't want to hear about my book. Let's talk about something else. Let's talk about your book.
And if you want to support us, you can head on over to patreon.com/wise_n_nerdy, or you can head on over to wiseandnerdy.com/calldad to leave us a voice message, just like a couple of other people did. My wife left one earlier, but we've got a couple from Casey J and Devo Site. But real quick, before we get into that, I'm going to announce the question of the week for the July 31st recording. So if you wanted to answer the question of the week, head on over to wiseandnerdy.com/calldad. And the question is, if you could bring one piece of sci-fi technology into the real world, what would you choose? Oh, that's a good one. I like it. I like it a lot.
Super cool. Super cool. This is a great idea. I'm looking at your page right now. This is awesome.
Well, thank you. All right, let's see what Casey J is nerding out about.
G'day, Dads. Casey here. Just wanted to share something I'm nerding out about. Last night, one of my co-workers would do 12-hour night shifts, and we're working at opposite ends of the factory, so we don't normally get to interact too much. But he sends me this link for a website called Friends and Fables, and I was a little bit curious. Opened it up, and it's Dungeons and Dragons run by an AI, but it's all 5th edition, and it's multiplayer. So he and I were role-playing back and forth with the dungeon master guiding us, and extra characters in our party played by the AI. And it is incredible, mate. If you want to play some Dungeons and Dragons, I highly recommend it. If you can't organize a group easily enough. We spent probably 9 of our 12-hour shift playing this game. And I even had my Bluetooth connected so I could have it. Narration would talk in different voices in my ear. AI is just incredible. So fables.gg, I think is the website. I highly recommend it.
Nice.
That is the website. I found it. Yeah.
As a dungeon master, I have used ChatGPT a fair bit to help me out, especially like when you're in town and they're just going to shops. You're like, okay, what does this shop have? What's this shop named? And I'm like, okay, let's just have AI generate some NPCs, generate the shop and the name of the shop. And unless I've got something specific already planned, I'm like, okay, ChatGPT can give me what the inventory is, how much the normal asking price is, along with a lot of times it'll give me a range. So if they want to try to haggle, I've got a range there. And so some of the mundane tasks of being a dungeon master are fantastic to funnel through ChatGPT. Personally,
I should have known you were a DM. I bet you're a great DM.
Oh, thank you. I consider myself a pretty good DM, but I'm a little biased. So, and then we've got another one from Devo Site. He's the one that did the intro for us. So let's see. He labeled it as Devo Pipe because that's Speak Pipe is the website that we use to facilitate these voicemails.
So I finished up the episode and listening to Charles. Let's face it, he was just kind of crying there at the end about how you were being a strong, independent podcaster. And let's face it, I could hear it in his voice. He was proud of you. He's proud of you for standing up and being spoken about your abilities. And I think you're doing a great job, man.
Well, thank you.
And Charles, well, he's doing a good job too. He's just, let's face it, he's jealous, man. Let's face it. That's what it's all about. But at the same time, he's still getting that attention. And that's what he loves. Anyway, you guys, it's great. I actually kind of enjoyed it. I kind of missed actually the Patreon intro from Charles and the extra, but that's all good. Anyway, no, I'm joking. You guys doing great. And I know Charles, man, God, he's got to be up to his ears right now, especially Dragon Con getting so close.
Yep.
Have a good one, man.
Yeah.
I feel like I missed something. Do I need to go back and check out the last episode?
So 2 episodes back when Charles was out, I had Phil Keating on, and Phil brings out an interesting side of me. And so we were bashing on Charles quite a bit during it. And so last week when Charles was back, he decided to address it on the show about how we were bashing on him. So yeah, it was fun. Yeah, but yeah, Charles, he's out about every other week because of Dragon Con commitments, because he's got
Yeah, no kidding.
meetings and whatnot.
Oh,
But
sure.
yeah, so fun time.
You'll be at Dragon Con, right? You coming to Dragon Con this year?
Oh yeah. Oh yeah.
Awesome. Okay, yeah, cool. Right.
So yeah, this year I am officially the second for the digital media track. So
Awesome. Very cool.
Last I heard, unless Charles changes his mind, the goal is in a few years for me to take over as the director, since he keeps getting more and more hats with Dragon Con. So
that's cool. Great.
Yeah. Real quick before we get to rolling the dice some more, I wanted to mention again the GoFundMe for Kurt's widow is out there. GoFund.me/D820E0FC. It goes to a great cause. We are still saddened by we'll always be saddened by the loss of Kurt, but yeah, if you have some money to spare, go ahead and toss it over to help his widow out. So thank you all for that, and thank you for helping out. All right,
roll that dice.
Let's see. I don't think we've done
How do I?
that one yet. So how do I tell stories that matter?
Okay.
There's a lot of stories are told, but how do you tell one that matters?
I've been thinking about it again because these were shared with me. I hope it's not like, I hope I'm not ruining the facade, the mystique here, because I saw this one on the sheet and I thought about this one a lot, and I really think so. A lot of authors will coach. So I'm speaking mostly about like writing books. A lot of authors will coach about writing to specific audiences and strategies for doing that. And they're probably right. They are probably right in the advice that they give. However, I never think about the audience at all when I'm writing a book. Personally, in my opinion, the way to write a story that matters is to write a story that matters to you. You know, all of my books, well, yeah, I guess that's true. All of my books are usually about something that I was going through, you know, so it's about something. So for example, Steelfire, and I'm not trying to bring this back to like me being promoting. I already did the terrible ad read over the music. We don't have to, none of us need to relive that. But so Steelfire is, you know, it's magic robots and action and all that kind of stuff. It's actually a character undergoing a crisis of faith. And I wrote it at a time when I was at a very, very dark time in my life, and I was undergoing a crisis of faith. And that's really what it's about. And it's about how isolating that can feel and how terrible then it is to be isolated and what a vicious cycle that can be. That's the heart of the story. You know, the robots doing like fire magic and stuff. That's the fun stuff, but it's really the furniture. That's not the heart of the story. I do think it's very important to know what the heart of your story is. Echo Nova, while again super fun and fast and, you know, crazy, and I've got temporally displaced sea dinosaurs and all kind of just, you know, weird things that made me laugh. It's actually about feeling like you have to prove yourself through achievement to have worth. And it was at a time when I felt like I had to do something special to be worthy of like love, you know, and to be worthy of people liking me and that sort of thing. And also, though, it was also kind of about how that desire, and then also people who do achieve some level of fame and notoriety, how it sort of warps our sense of reality. It warps their sense of reality, but it also warps our sense of reality as the audience. And it was happenstance. So he gets super famous in the book. And while I was writing that book, I was also watching the 8-hour O.J. Simpson documentary, which, by the way, I highly recommend. 8-hour documentary. I wouldn't cut a minute of it.
Wow. Okay.
But it was so good, man. It's so good because it's so much about how, well, there's this, so he's, you know, spoiler, in the Bronco chase. And everybody knew what was going on. Everybody knew. He's in the Bronco, not speeding down the freeway, driving really slow down the freeway with a gun to his head. And he's, you know, wanted for this heinous crime, and people were going out to the streets and they're holding up signs like "Go OJ, go!" and they're laughing and they're joking and they're cheering in what is this like terrible, horrible situation.
Yeah.
And I was watching that part of the documentary, and I was like, it's not real for these people because this is just more entertainment,
Yep.
And
There's
I do think
that disconnect.
there's that disconnect, and it's just kind of it warps our sense of what is real. And so, anyways, those were a lot of the things that I was thinking about and going through when I was writing Echo Nova. And some people, actually, some reviewers have written some things about Echo Nova being kind of like social commentary, sort of about about fame and notoriety, which, by the way, wasn't entirely intentional. That stuff, it was more about. None of my themes are ever really intentional until I'm done with the book, and then I kind of realize that they're there, and then maybe I'll go back and work on it and sharpen that a little bit. But I think, but to answer the story of how do you write stories that matter, I think that if you set out to try to write something that's going to matter to other people, I think you're unfortunately, I think you're less likely to do it instead of just writing something that matters to you. Think about what it is that you're going through, and the story that matters to you, and the chances are that it's going to resonate with someone else. But again, this kind of comes back to my thing that even when we were talking about AI, even if it doesn't, you are going to have this amazing cathartic experience of telling yourself the story of what it is that you yourself are going through. And when we articulate things, I think this is called the Sapir-Whorf hypothesis, which is that language shapes our reality, and that we don't fully we don't fully understand something until we put words to it. When you force yourself to articulate a story of whatever it is that you are dealing with or going through, I think you more fully understand it. And then you also are better able to sort of see how you ought to go through it. So, anyways, that's my long-winded, way of just saying, like, don't try to write something that's going to matter to somebody else. Write something that's going to matter to you, and chances are it'll matter to somebody else. But don't even worry about that part. Just give yourself that gift.
Focus on your own human experience and let that be a guide. Now,
Totally.
you prefaced at the beginning, because you started off with people who are giving advice to other authors. They talk about how you find your audience and then write to that audience.
Yeah.
Which I imagine that advice stems from trying to get published. That writing to a specific audience helps you market and therefore makes your work more publishable.
Right.
And a lot of people go into writing with the mentality of publish first, story later, and often that pigeonholes the creative process, because you're like, oh, I'm writing a young adult novel, it has to do this and this and this and this. And so instead of stretching the boundaries or playing with it or letting it flow, you get pigeonholed into, okay, I need to be a bit more formulaic. And that it doesn't always, but that can stifle writing a story that really matters.
It can. And I do want to make this point clear, because there are people who will tell you to do that, and I'm not telling you that they're wrong. You might get published doing that. You might sign a deal. You might make some sales. You might make some money. I don't think. Well, I shouldn't say this. I don't think I would write something special if I did it that way. I'll put it like that. I don't think that I could create my greatest work doing it that way, and I wouldn't want to anyway.
And it boils down to your priorities as an author. Is your main priority getting published, or is that a secondary or tertiary priority? Is the story the main priority? And that is different for each author on how they rank their different priorities. Some don't mind. Some authors don't mind being formulaic as long as it leads to a paycheck. And some really want to be true creatives and let that blossom and grow into something beautiful without constraints. And
Well, and
there's
again,
not a right or wrong
there's
way
not
to go about it.
because I'm sure there are plenty of authors who would hear what I just said and be like, all right, that's cute, man, but I got to feed my kids. And I'm like, you know what?
Yeah.
I'm not telling you you're wrong. You know, they're like, look, I gotta create, especially, man, some of them too, especially authors who are doing high volume releases, you know, and they're counting on that income to keep the lights on and keep food on the table. I'm not telling anybody their business. But for me personally, though, I didn't know that Echo Nova was young adult until my publisher, honestly, kind of asked me like, "What do you want it to be?" It could go either way, you know. I don't do
once
it that
it's
way.
finally getting published, you got to know where to put it on a shelf at Barnes and
You
Noble.
got to know where to put it on. You got to know where to put it on a shelf. Yeah, that's right. That's right. Yeah.
But I think allowing those labels to get slapped on it posthumously, so to speak, I think is the way that I would like to do it, assuming I ever get to that point. I've got a lot of notes written down for stories that I would like to tell, but
okay,
we'll have
to
get there.
What's the deal? What's going on? What number do I have to roll on the dice to get you to tell me like? Oh wait, hold on. Okay, yeah, it came up with the number of Joseph. Tell me what's going on with these books, man. That's the number that came up on my dice here. Yeah.
Yeah. No, I've got a lot of ideas written down. I've got a lot of scenes written. Well, not fully written out, but the outlines of scenes drafted, how I want it to start, the turn. Like I've got a lot of it up there. I just gotta knuckle down and put it to paper.
Are you a perfectionist?
A little bit, yeah.
Is that why this hasn't happened yet?
Yeah, and I need to get over that and just get to getting. But
all the first draft has to do is exist. That's it. That's the only thing it has to do is exist. Yeah.
And it can be plenty sloppy, and then
it's supposed to be bad
after. Yeah.
It's supposed to be bad.
But yeah, I'll get there eventually. But yeah. I mean, it's just like anything. Whenever you're trying to start anything, you just need to start and see how it goes.
Totally.
And yeah, no, I've got a OneNote sheet with all kinds of different segmented notes, and yeah, no, yeah.
We're going to talk about this more, by the way. I won't make you do it now, but we're going to talk about this more. I'm not going to let this go. Yeah.
So, but yeah, when it comes to telling a story that really matters, I really like how you focused in on letting real life experiences inspire your writing, because there's, we talked a lot about AI earlier, and how the stories that I've listened to on Facebook and whatnot are of these AI generated stories. You're like, no, that's not how a person would normally react to a situation like that. This isn't how things would happen. And a lot of it's like, this isn't legally how stuff could happen.
Right.
Especially when they start talking about like different lawsuits and whatnot. Anyway, regardless, there's a lot of stuff that just doesn't pass the normal human experience vibe check. And so letting that inspire your writing really does lend to writing stuff that matters and can resonate and can change lives. People can take your writing and help it uplift their own life, even if it's sci-fi fantasy and it's completely unreal. The human experiences in it can be so authentic. We talked earlier about Harry Potter. There are so many different aspects of Harry Potter's life that you're like, oh no, that makes a whole lot of sense. Like when he kisses Cho for the first time and she's crying and he's like, oh, how was the kiss? Salty. Like, Yeah, no duh, because Cho is going through all these different emotions all at the same
Yeah.
time, and the human experience is not clean and methodical. It's messy. It's real, and it's not always logical.
And when you put those things into your story and then someone else reads them, it reminds them that they're not alone in whatever it is that they're experiencing, because this super weird or super dark, or maybe just this thing that is totally illogical, but you can't shake it anyway. And then when you see that somebody else has had that same idea or that same thought, I don't know, there's just something to just reminding you that you're not alone in what it is that you're experiencing, because a lot of times it's easy to feel like you are alone in what you are experiencing. And again, I think that's the connection that just makes art so wonderful. It is something that I do not believe that and again, I'm not super like I'm not the big AI alarmist guy, even though I wrote a book about AI figuring out magic and using it against us. But I think it's something that it can't replicate, is just that human connection part. I think that's what's always going to keep people more drawn to real human stories is that, that type of connection. But it takes courage. It takes courage for you to put those, even when you're putting it into a fictional story, it still takes a lot of courage to put those deeply personal thoughts and ideas into a story, because people are going to read them, and then they're going to know that if nothing else, you thought it, even if you don't believe it, even if you didn't go through it, if nothing else, you came up with it, and that at least says something about you. And those are thoughts that, you honestly should be having, I think, when you're writing a book, because if you're not scaring yourself a little bit, you're probably not pushing far enough. So,
yeah. So scare your kids a little bit by letting them
scare your
watch
kids a little bit, scare yourself a little bit. That's the theme here.
Yep. Definitely. All right. Well, we've got just a couple more segments to go. Let's see what we're going to go to next.
Roll the dice if you dare.
How many of these do you have? How many of these?
It's random. I don't know.
For real?
Yeah, I push the button and it randomly pulls.
That's
it out.
awesome. That's so great.
So, all right, we've got
Bad dad joke.
Oh yes. Okay. Cool. Okay. Here's the thing. My kids aren't quite old enough yet to like appreciate the ones that are more like wordplay and sort of pun-based kind of thing. But this is kind of a bad dad that I love to do, and I actually I stole this. I read it online somewhere, and I was like, "That's so good." Is like when they will hurt their finger or something like that, and I'm like, oh, okay, I guess we got to install a new finger. And then I go get like either if I have some of my tools close or some of their play tools or whatever, and like grab their hand where they can't see. I'm like, okay, we're gonna pop this one off, and then and all that kind of stuff. So I love installing new body parts on my kids, and I do this all the time, and that's one of my favorite. And a lot of times they're still upset because they got hurt, but then they're also like laughing because they know it's ridiculous, but they're also telling me to please stop. Yeah, this is one of my favorite dad things is like, hey, I just got a shipment of new left toes. I mean, this is perfect because I got too many. So, I just pop one right on there for you. But yeah, so that's one of my favorites.
Are you even a real dad if you haven't said, all right, I guess we better chop it off?
That's right. That's it. That's it.
You've got to. Oh man. Let's see.
So what about you?
We've got a bunch. So we've got a bad dad joke section in our Discord that we often get some great
awesome
ones in here. So let's see. So this one comes to us from the Full Run Through. He says, I just learned that a dentist in my neighborhood was busted for selling drugs. I've known this guy for 5 years. 5 years. And he never told me he was a dentist.
That's pretty good. I like that. That's good. I like
that. This one also comes to us from the Full Run Through. He says, I had to use a step ladder at work today. It's a shame I never got to know my real ladder.
That's great.
So yeah, some good ones in the chat.
Do you do this to your kids? Do you do the dad joke thing?
Oh yeah,
Yeah.
all the time.
Yeah.
So yeah. If you're not making your kids cringe with random plays on words, we might have
When
to
that's-
revoke your dad card.
Your oldest, he's old enough to embarrass now. So that's, I mean,
Oh,
you're
yeah.
entering a golden age in that regard. That's fantastic.
Oh yeah, I mean he's homeschooled, so but he still has some homeschool friends I can embarrass in front of.
Very cool, man.
Not quite as many opportunities. I just gotta be very precise with them, really zone in. So, but all right, we've got one last segment to do.
What are you nerding about?
And what are you nerding out about? You kind of teased me with it, but you didn't explicitly state what you're nerding out about.
Oh, okay. Well, and I wonder if this is even because sometimes I just say things and then forget I said them. No. Okay. Again, still pretty young kids, which means I'm not very plugged in. I miss things a lot when they come out. And this past weekend, my wife and I was just like, man, I want a fun summer sci-fi fantasy thing to watch. And it can't be Independence Day because I just watched Independence Day. And I was kind of poking around. I had no idea that in 2023, a Dungeons and Dragons movie came out with Chris Pine. I had no idea that this movie,
man.
I had no idea this movie existed. My wife is I'm actually more sci-fi. She's more fantasy. I told her, I was like, hey, as soon as we get the kids down, and she's like, awesome, let's do this. That movie was fantastic. That movie, here's what I loved about it. So many things that do like nerd humor, they do it kind of in a way that's actually sort of more like making fun of nerds. It's not actually nerd humor. It's like big.
Yeah.
And by the way, I liked Big Bang Theory. I thought it was a good show. I enjoyed the show. It wasn't actually for nerds. It was for other people to sort of laugh at nerds, right? Totally fine. But so much of the humor in that Dungeons and Dragons movie, it was so smart. It was ridiculous, but smart at the same time. And it reminded me of my smartest nerd friends. And so I am a novice at D&D. I've only played one time. And it was actually with some people from my publisher. They took pity on me. They're like, look, we do a Zoom. We'll bring you in for a one shot and hopefully you won't ruin it. And I kind of did. But there were so many things in there that I was like, that joke is so obviously something that must have come from D&D because it is such a I'm doing this to make my friends laugh type of a thing. And then they put it in the movie and it was so well done. So many of the jokes were so well done. And again, it was such a pleasant surprise because again, I had no idea that this movie existed. And it was absolutely fantastic. And I've been telling so many people I've been telling about this movie and so many of them are like, how did you not know about this? But then a few of them have been like, oh yeah, I kind of heard about that, but I never had a chance to see it. So, which is the best type of thing. So,
oh man, I think one of my favorite scenes in it is the graveyard when they're asking questions of all the dead people. So good.
That's when I laughed the hardest at the first one. That's when I laughed the hardest. When he's like, why did you ask it like that? And he says, I didn't. And then the corpse lays back. Oh man, it was so good. But that's what I'm saying. It was so clever. It wasn't just like dumb nerd jokes. You know, it's funny. My wife literally just texted me. She must be watching the live stream. She said that she giggled at the chubby dragon. We also did love the chubby dragon. Oh man, that was so good. But like and we're spoiling things now. So I'm sorry, people, if you haven't seen it, go watch it. And I won't spoil the joke, but the little creatures that are drawn to mental energy, and I was like, this is a DM making fun of his friends. That is exactly what this is. And I love that they put this in the movie and it was so good. So yeah. Anyway,
so many good clever moments. And the fact that it's in the same world as Baldur's Gate, they're really going ham on the Forgotten Realms. It's a great world to be in. And some of my favorite books are the Dark Elf books, the Drizzt Do'Urden books. I don't know if
I haven't read them actually. No, but pretty good though.
Yeah, by R.A. Salvatore. Very good stuff.
And I just got a correction too via text. My wife says, "No, you," meaning me, giggled like a little girl at the dragon, and she's actually she's right. I totally did. I totally did.
Well, and they did such a good job um, of subverting your expectations.
Yes.
Like with the chubby dragon.
Yes.
And especially when you compare it to the Dungeons and Dragons movie that came out in the what late 90s, early 2000s.
Yeah. Whatever. Yeah. Right.
Where they heard, oh, there's supposed to be dungeons and there's supposed to be dragons, and that's all they really
That's all they
focused
took.
on. And they're like, okay, no, this actually went into not just the lore of the world, but how people play the game.
Yes.
And really
Yes.
really hammed into some of the weird interactions that you would see at the table that you wouldn't
Yep.
expect in a movie. And so
Right.
it was awesome.
They captured sort of like if there was a universal voice of Dungeons and Dragons, right? Kind of like
Yeah.
shared by all players. They captured it so well.
Yeah, the shared experience of players. So good.
Yeah. So that's been a good. The only one that I'll mention too, and literally I just finished this book today. This is not like super like stereotypical nerdy. Are you a Blink 182 guy at all?
Yeah, fair bit, yeah.
Well, you know what's so funny? I would have answered that question the exact same way, which is basically to say like, oh yeah, I like some of their songs, whatever. I just finished Mark Hoppus's book, Fahrenheit 182. For anyone out there who likes music biographies, it was fantastic. I burned through that audiobook in 2 days. I love biographies of people just trying to achieve great things. And I will read just about any of them, but I just finished that one and it was awesome. It was a very, very good book. So I'm also kind of nerding out a little bit about, because again, I'm a music guy and I'm a bass player. So the fact that, anytime there's a bass player in a band who's also gets to be at least like half the time he's the lead singer, I'm a big fan of that. So yeah, super, super good audiobook if people are into rock, especially rock from that era at all. Which I mean, we're dating ourselves by with that reference, but there's not bands anymore, so it's really sad. But yeah.
Oh,
but a really good book.
But pivoting a little bit, a new season of anime has started this past week, which means the previous season is concluding, and so I just thought I'd mention a few of the standouts that I enjoyed from this past season. One of the ones that I liked a lot more than I was expecting to be honest, is My Hero Academia Vigilantes. Have you watched any of the My Hero Academia stuff? I
have watched almost no anime, and I keep trying to find my entry point, and I don't know why I haven't figured it out yet. And I've gotten tons of different recommendations. So where do you? Because I know the storytelling is fantastic, and I don't know why I haven't gotten into it.
Yeah. So I'll have to talk to you a bit more about some of your preferences, and then because Charles knows this about me, but I pride myself on my recommendations, on trying to
nice.
Get them
like an anime matchmaker. Okay, cool.
So I've recommended a few to Charles that he really liked.
Very cool.
But yeah. So, but from this past season, My Hero Academia Vigilantes is a prequel side story of the My Hero Academia world. So, in My Hero Academia, the main series follows a kid named Midoriya, and it's his hero's journey to becoming a hero and whatnot. So this one, completely separate prequel, and the main character, his quirk, his ability is if he has at least 3 of his limbs touching a surface, he can glide on it.
Cool.
Okay. So he calls himself the Crawler, and he glides around, and when he first starts off, he can go about as fast as a bicycle.
Okay.
He gets a lot faster as it goes on, which I kind of, one thing I do wish is that it had a bit of more of a acknowledgement of him getting faster, because he
Yeah.
literally says at the beginning, I'm about as fast as a bicycle. But then he's way fast. Like it shows him chasing down a motorcycle later. And so it's like that's a bit faster than a pedal bike. Just saying.
Is he under the laws of gravity though? Like, can he glide up a wall?
Yeah, he can glide up a wall. He
Okay,
actually does.
cool.
To get to his apartment, he glides up a wall because
Cool.
the building underneath it, while not condemned, is nearly condemned, and he lives up on a shed up on the top of the building, and
Very
so
cool.
he puts his hands on either side of the walls in an alleyway between the buildings to go up.
Very
But
cool.
because due to circumstances, he was not able to take the hero exam to get
Okay.
admitted to the hero school to become an official hero. So he has become a vigilante, working outside of the law, but he still has that deep desire to help the community. And so this is him and a couple of other people taking on that role in their neighborhood as vigilantes, and helping out where they can, and more often than not acting as a distraction until other heroes show up, because they also recognize their own limitations when it comes to what villains they can realistically take on and whatnot. But it has a lot of heart to it, and I really enjoyed it. Like I said, it has none of the main characters, but you do see some of the side characters in a little bit younger form. I don't know actually how long beforehand this happened from the original, but it's my guess is probably about 10 years prior to the other series. So that was a great one, and probably my favorite from this past season, at least for now, because there's some that I haven't watched yet from this past season, simply because my wife has watched the first season, and so I'm waiting for her to watch it. Like there's one called Apothecary Diaries. My wife and I watched season 1, absolutely loved it. My wife though does not watch, she doesn't want subtitles, so we got to wait until the dubbed version comes out, and then we'll watch it together. And that we're getting pretty close to where all of the dubbed episodes are out for season 2, and then we can watch Apothecary Diaries. But it's my guess is once I watch that, it will become my favorite from this past season, even though I didn't watch it as it was releasing. But then there were some other quirky ones that came out. The one I mentioned it briefly on the show early on, but it was called The Brilliant Healer's New Life in the Shadows. And
great title.
So a lot of anime, the title is very descriptive. It's almost an elevator pitch in and of itself.
Sure.
But I'm a sucker for anime where the main character in the first episode is betrayed to some degree, and it's his comeuppance and the people that betrayed him realizing their worth after the fact. And so that's kind of
at first I was gonna say, well, this jives with the Count of Monte Cristo that you talked about earlier. Although,
Count of Monte Cristo is fantastic. But so in this one, he's a healer who is kicked out of his adventuring party, and he's not an officially licensed healer. He is partially self-taught, partially had a master, but he didn't officially go to a healer school, so he's not licensed. And so he decides he's gonna live in the slums and be an underground healer that just takes money for his healing. He's gonna open up his own little clinic, and it helps that he doesn't realize how abnormally powerful he is as a healer. So that's a common theme, a common shtick in anime, where the main character is kind of clueless about their own power relative to other people. They take themselves to be average when they're
Yeah.
exceptional. And
Extraordinary.
so
Yeah. Right.
so a lot of the things that he does, people are like, wait, what? He's like, yeah, well, how else would you do it? Like, for instance, he has a magic skill that can scan someone's body to scan for ailments.
Mhm.
And he's like, okay, how would a healer know what to heal if they can't scan the body and detect things? But it never shows anyone else able to do that in the anime.
Right.
And
Right.
so different things like that. But it's also, I'm a sucker for main characters who are genuinely good people
Mhm.
as well. And this
Yeah.
has that as well, where he's genuinely a good person, regardless.
Morally perfect. Yeah. Right.
Yeah, regardless of the betrayal and really every reason to become a villain. And you see that where a common thing that I see online these days is showing the tragic events that lead people to become villains.
Mhm.
And so I love to see these heroes where their life experience, if they may, well, just like that Dumbledore quote, the choices
Yeah.
are what
That's what I was
make
thinking.
us.
Yeah.
Where they had every reason to be a villain and they chose to
Hmm.
be a hero.
Good
And
stuff.
so, yeah, so it's got plenty of campy stuff in it and things like that, but I quite thoroughly enjoyed it. And then the last one on my list that I wanted to mention is um, the beginning after the end. It's an isekai. So for those that are unfamiliar with anime terms, it's an isekai just means going from one world to another, basically.
Okay. All right.
Whether that's through teleportation, through reincarnation, through whatever means, it's leaving your world and going to another. In this
Okay.
instance, um, the main character was this super powerful tyrant. Really, he was a king, but he was a tyrant who really lacked empathy and ruled with an iron fist. And he died and was reborn into this other world. So the beginning after the end. So his
Yeah.
previous life ended, and this is his new
Right.
beginning. And it's him wanting to actually be a good person.
Hmm.
And it shows him growing because even though he wants that, he doesn't feel that.
Right.
He lacks empathy, he lacks a lot of things, but
Yeah.
he wants to be a good person and he wants to care. And so he slowly develops those, even if it's not genuine empathy, he can emulate empathy to a certain degree, if that makes sense. um and
This is
he
a fascinating topic to me, by the way.
yeah
The difference between what we know and what we feel,
yeah
you spend a lot of time thinking about that. But that's interesting though, to not have empathy, but to sort of recognize its virtues and want it, but also not. That's good character stuff right there. Wow.
yeah so there's these different depths to his character that I really really liked,
Yeah.
which you don't often get with isekai.
Hmm.
Isekai tend to be a bit more formulaic than a lot of other anime
Okay.
stories.
Yeah.
Of course, there's always exceptions, and so with this
Right.
one, having those depths to the character of him wanting to be a good person, even if he doesn't feel it.
Yeah.
And you see that in a bunch of other stuff, especially like anything where there's AI, where they don't feel because they're robots a lot of times, but they
Right.
want to feel, and so they emulate
Yeah.
what they think they should feel. So obviously he doesn't have that capability. He is capable of feeling even if he's got
Mm.
stunted emotional growth. And so while he's growing his magical and physical abilities, he's also trying to grow as a person and develop as a person and he's trying to become a genuinely good person, even if he wasn't naturally a genuinely good person.
That is fertile character development ground right there. Because essentially what you're asking is, can people really change? Yeah. And that is good stuff, and personally, I believe that people can change. I believe it's really, really hard, but I do believe it's possible.
And it often takes a pretty major catalyst. In this
It
case,
does.
he died.
Yeah. Right.
So, but yeah, it often takes a pretty major catalyst for massive change to occur in a person.
Yeah. Right.
But everyone is capable of change. What's the quote I heard from a prison warden? Like, someone told him, why is he working so hard and I'm paraphrasing based off of memory, but why are you working so hard to reform these prisoners? Leopards don't change their stripes. And the prison warden came back with, I don't work with leopards, I work with people.
Yeah, man, that's good.
And
that's good.
Everyone is capable of becoming a better person.
Yeah, totally agree.
So
yeah, totally agree.
But yeah. All right. Well, on that, I mean, that's a great high
That's
point to end
how about
on.
that? Wow.
And
wow.
So just get out there and be the author of your own stories.
Yeah. Good. Wow, that was that's so good.
Follow these nerdy dads on social media. Charles at Rock God of Podcasting. Joe at Joseph_Ard. Check out the website, wiseandnerdy.com. And as always, they may not be your father, but they'll always be your dad.
So good. So we just vibe to the music for a few minutes. Is that what this part is?
Yep.
Cool, man.